Hello all, welcome to study 37 of the Solving Studies to Improve Chess Calculation series. This position is a hard one, so you get an idea. I took more than 20 minutes, and even so, I think I have find one good line, and I was happy with it. And then when I studied more deeply, then I found out that I missed some defensive teams, and so I can't say I have solved it in a perfect way. Far from that. So expect this one to be hard. Nevertheless, trust me when I tell you this. If you invest time with this one, you are going to get really satisfaction when you work on the solution. And also, these kind of studies are the ones that start to give us the ability to think outside the box, to look at different moves, and especially one kind of moves that is very important, that are the intermediate ones and the ones that we are not really expecting when calculating. And if you can cover that by practice, you'll become a far better player. Trust me on this one. This one is worth the effort. Okay, about the man that brought us this study is Tigran Gorgiev. He is a Russian Sovietic master. He did develop compositions for us. He was considered one of the best from the Soviet times. He was born in the Dagestan Republic near Afghanistan, and so he did not have many players to play with, so he dedicated more to reading, and so very soon he started to compose, and then he made his chess life more or less dedicated to chess composition, which for us it's good. He also was deputy director of the Institute of Epidemiology in Odessa, so he traveled for Ukraine. So I think you are going to enjoy. Again, if you haven't watched the guide for instructions of how to put your effort on the solution, and then we come back with a solution so we all can enjoy this one. And here we are, and as always, let's start with the first move. We need to see some things before, but okay, the first excellent good move is bishop c6, sacrificing the bishop. The idea is to get the pawn away, so when the pawn takes, we go, and the idea is to promote to queen. But let's just go a bit more slow here so we can really understand what's going on. Of course, first thing we look at the position, we see, okay, white is going to lose one piece. So either the bishop or the knight, so we really can't do much about it. And we are trying to win, so, well, it kind of looks very strange. But if we are wanting to win, in some ways, we need to promote some pawn. But let's say, for example, we try this in our mind just to see. Well, with a check, the king moves, and there's no way we are going to win. In fact, we are fighting not to lose over here. So, without this pawn being available, we start to look to the other side. Okay, white can also try to sacrifice the bishop. There's an idea over here. Not an easy line also to see in completion. The idea now is to play g6 and then promote the pawn. Of course, first we need to take care of our knight. So we move the knight away. And the king comes to support the pawns, because the idea from black now is to sacrifice the bishop for the g pawn, so not allowing him it to promote, of course. So when the pawn advances, black simply sacrifice, and now we got this position. And here black is the one playing for a win. Yes, it's still a draw, but white needs to be very smart, because black is going to advance the pawn. And for example, if here white is not paying attention, trying to bring the knight too soon, like for example playing knight f4 check, well, the king just attacks the knight moves away, and now we got these two connected pass pawns, and black is winning over here. So even here, white needs to be careful, and so needs to find moves like moving the king, which is not that natural. Waiting for black to advance the pawns more, and the pawns advance, and moving the king again. So we are waiting. So not so easy also for white to play, as you understand. If you are from the starting position trying to win, this is not for sure the ideal situation for white. And when the pawn advances, now we can check the king in, because we are going to always threat to take the pawn. Of course, if here the pawn promotes the queen, then I fork with the check and win the queen, so it will be a draw. But of course, black can also promote to a knight, which make it more difficult. Then we need to find moves like this one, knight c6, sacrificing the knight with the idea, well, black can take, because otherwise I promote the pawn. So check, okay, don't forget. The king takes the pawn, and then I take the other pawn, and so it will be a draw in the end, but we need to be precise. So these ideas of advancing the pawn or taking the pawn were not good for our solution. And so I think after a bit, we are starting to look into the good move. And here it's black to play. Of course, we can't play much moves. Like, for example, taking the knight is not enough, because we take the pawn and black is in a hard situation, can't stop the advancing of this pawn. So needs to play moves like, for example, bishop e2. And then when I advance, and of course, here white is winning. So this is not the best defensive move for black for sure. What other ideas can black try? Well, it can try to bring the king, but again, the bishop takes the pawn, and the king can't progress anymore, and now we advance the pawn. We really even doesn't care anymore about the knight, because we are going to promote to queen, and in this situation, we are even still keeping the bishop. So over here is pretty obvious. We start by deviating the pawn from controlling our a pawn. So when the pawn takes, the idea is to go and promote the pawn. And at first sight, this seems to be very working. And my first idea was to see, okay, then I advance the pawn, the bishop takes the knight, I advance the pawn again, and then check. Okay, the king moves. This is a mistake, but we will see it more slowly. just so you understand what's going on. And black just advances the pawn, and because black is controlling the promotion of the a pawn, it's game over for white. So uh, we are really forced to try to see, okay, over here, what can we do? If you try to do some moves over here, like for example, going with the knight to d2, the idea is to delay the way black can come to control the a pawn. Here, black will always find a way because now with the bishop we are controlling the advancing of the pawn, so it's game over for white again. And if you are trying to control this one, like for example, going over here, so controlling the two squares from the bishop, seems like working because now black seems okay, it can't stop this pawn. But very soon we find this team check, the king moves, takes the pawn, and if you advance, then you got the same defense to the a pawn problem for black. So after a while, we even can think on moves like this one. We start to think on these moves after a while. If we start practicing solving studies, we are going to start to look at moves that are not so obvious, not so natural. And that means also that we are improving. But again, black can simply check our king. The king moves, and now black is again controlling the diagonal, because if I advance the pawn, it simply plays c5, and again, white is losing over here. So moving the knight is not possible. And so we start to wonder, okay, but then what can we do? If we advance the pawn, okay, if we advance the pawn, the bishop takes the knight, and of course we need to deal with this check. But what if we can block the check? And the idea comes. And so after a while, I realized that, okay, I can play g6 first, and then I am threatening to check and then promote to a queen. So black takes the pawn, I advance my pawn, and there's no way black now can control to avoid the promotion, because if it takes the pawn, I simply promote to the queen, because now it wasn't check as the pawn was blocking, and I was feeling, whoa, great, I am really good. Also, one thing that I miss over here was when black, okay, when black plays, I advance the pawn, and I was expecting check, moving the king, but again, I found out that okay, I can also block it with g6. But this part I only found after thinking I had solved the problem with the g6, that also worked. But this is also working, and that's the good part of going deep in the solutions, because we learn different approaches, and so we can do that now. Because if the bishop takes, well, that's obvious. I simply move the king, the bishop can't come back and move the c pawn again. So the most logical is to take the pawn. But of course now check. So even with that bonus, I am winning again. So even this one was working, and I was happy. Okay, let's give this as done. But no, I was wrong. Why? Because yes, I advanced the pawn and it looks great, but there is a better uh, defensive solution for black. And it's a pain in the heart when we find that this is not going to be easy again. And the move from black is to play the check now, to go into that plan. And now if the king moves, okay, this is just losing again, because now if I advance the pawn, well, black has time, of course, to control the promotion. And okay, what's going on over here? And as you can see, things are not easy. And if you haven't reached here with this solution, because as I told you, I just had considered bishop taking the knight, which seems very obvious, but that's why we work these studies, and that's why we can improve. It's when we go to the other possibilities. But after looking at this, things are not so obvious, because as you saw, the obvious move is not working. And so this leaves us just one possibility, which is the correct one. Is to go with king h8, but not easy to see because, of course, now we are expecting bishop to take the pawn. And as you can see, if you try to promote it, it's not going to work because black just plays c5 and is controlling the diagonal. So it's not possible for white to win anymore. In fact, white is losing over here, or at least very close to that. Uh, and so we need to come up with different ideas. And after a while, we need to find these completely crazy maneuvers. Brilliant move, sacrificing the pawn. Okay, the idea is if the bishop goes there, then I have time to promote to a queen. So, of course, the pawn is going to take our pawn back. Now we attack the bishop. Okay, so now we attack the bishop. And, of course, it's black to play, needs to protect the bishop. But now, another interesting good move, check. Okay, again, if you take the knight, then we have time to promote. The king moves, like for example over here, and of course, this is the brilliant move. I think this one is going to be easier when you reach this point, because we are going to take the pawn, but there is a lot of pawns over here, like a wall, and the bishop can't control the pawn. So now we simply go and get our king and win this game after a brilliant found of many interesting moves. Notice that over here, if you take the pawn, is again a mistake, because can you find? Yes, we simply move the bishop away, and when pawn advances, we simply advance the pawn, and black is already fighting for a win, and white is struggling. We'll lose in the end. So I hope you have enjoyed this solution from the beginning. It's not easy. It's not easy. So first we try to attract the pawn, then we advance, but not expecting this move, but this one. And here we need to find that king over here doesn't work. Let's see, for example, one possible way. Well, we can try play the pawn. Well, that's simple because we are not guaranteeing the promotion of the pawn, and the bishop takes our knight. So this study is full of small details, and I hope you have enjoyed the solution as much as I have. So as you see, it was not a perfect solution. Even so, I took 22 minutes to look it deeper, and I can say I have found it. Hope you have enjoyed it, and see you in future studies. Bye bye.